Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar presentation, Building a Core Network and Harvesting Opportunities, presented by FEI Dallas chapter. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce the CPE offerings today. We are offering 1.5 CPE credits for today's presentation. To be eligible for those credits, you do need to answer 5 of the 6 polling questions during the webinar and have a total viewing time of 75 minutes. Participants will receive the CPE notification email when the credits are available. That typically takes between 7 and 10 business days. We are unable to grant CPE credit in cases where technical difficulty preclude eligibility. CPE program sponsor guidelines prohibit us from issuing credit to those not verified by the technology to have satisfied the requirements as stated. And in accordance with the standards of the National Registry of CPE Sponsors, CPE credit is granted on a 50-minute hour. And now I'd like to introduce Bob Walker. Bob is the Vice President of Financial Advisors, Merrill Lynch, and Dallas Chapter Chair of the Career Management Group. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Welcome, everybody, to the continuing virtual ENG FEI Career Management meeting. I'd like to begin by welcoming you all and by indicating to you that we're very thankful to our sponsors and to our advisory committee. Our advisory committee, of course, consists of Cliff Edwards, Jim Ashworth, John Casey, and Kelly Harris, and myself. And quite frankly, we're going to be doing some planning here very shortly, over a couple bottles of wine, I think, to determine where we're going to go further on the virtual type of perspective. But without further ado, I'd like to simply introduce to you Mr. Cliff Edwards, who will introduce our speaker.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it. I'm Cliff Edwards with Thomas Edwards Group. We're a Dallas-based accounting and finance search firm. We also do staffing and project work. Today we have Debbie Williams speaking. I think this is the 3rd or 4th time, maybe more, that she's spoken before FENG, and she's done a number of FEI panels as well. Has always been a big hit. Today, she's going to talk about building a core network. And she basically wrote the book on this. She is the founder of Haston Williams and the DFW CFO group, which I imagine some of you are in. Haston Williams is an executive search firm that specializes in placing high-level accounting and finance professionals. She started the company about 12 years ago. And then for about 17 years before that, she was with one of the big national search firms. So she's been doing this a while, knows a lot of people, and she gets a lot of nice high-level positions. Definitely an expert in this part of the country, and a person that I've dealt with over the years, and she's proven to be just the highest integrity, really defines honesty, I think, in the executive search world, and I think is somebody that you definitely need to know. She's a graduate of Texas Tech. And without further ado, I will introduce Debbie Williams. Also, we will be having some questions throughout. Please just do those in the chat box. And then we will, when there's breaks in action, then we'll have those. Debbie?
Before you begin, Debbie, we do have a poll question.
Thank you, Cliff. Perfect.
We'll give you just a few moments to answer that first polling question. Are you currently in a job search? All right, I'm going to end that polling question and let my folks know what that's. And there are your results.
Oh, good. 68% of you are in job search right now, 18% are not, and 14% are always looking for new opportunities. That's great. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. And Cliff, Bob, Nancy, FEI, FENG, thank you very much for the opportunity to share this information with you. I'd prefer to be seeing you all in person, but I guess with circumstances, we're good with the Zoom meeting. Before we get started, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go slide by slide and kind of engage you in discussion. I'm not a formal person. For you that know me, you know I'd rather be meeting you one-on-one and talking to you about this. But so what I'd like to do is, as I'm discussing things, send in your questions via chat to Cliff, and then at the end of every slide, I'm just going to ask if there are questions, and then we can go from there. Also, I want to make sure that you know everything that I discuss in these slides or my presentation is kind of addressing my market where my niche area is, which is the small to mid-sized companies within the DFW area. They're a mixture of public and private companies. I do a lot of private equity, so there's a lot of private equity references in this presentation. And I do primarily the director or controller level. Those are the searches that I work through CFO level. Okay, so let's get started and let's have some fun. For those that know me, you know that I grew up in a farming community in West Texas. I actually got my first tractor when I was a tractor driving job when I was 6. So little did I know that all of the lessons that I learned about farming were going to be so applicable to job search and building a core network and to my profession of 30 years. So what I'm going to teach you today is kind of how I built my search practice, and I do this every day just like you're doing, or 68% of you are doing. So the goals of our discussion are just to make sure that you understand that networking and job search need to be tangible. It's just like anything else. If it's not tangible, you can't put any metrics around it and measure it and see how you're doing on a daily, a weekly, a monthly basis. So you need to be able to make it tangible. You need to be able to understand what you can control and then build or create metrics to stay on track. And then once you understand that, you'll understand that these processes and metrics that you've built and making your search tangible will just result, or the outcome will be your interviews and your offers. So you see on the left-hand side, I think for most of you, you see the pictures. These are some of the things I want you to understand what you can control. Up in the upper right hand or left hand is your soil. You can control your soil. That's your network. That's how nutrient rich is your network. Then your next picture over is someone planting seeds. You need to plant contacts. You need to water and maintain your network. But the one thing you can't control is the one thing we all want. We all want you to have great jobs and interviews, but you can't control your harvest. So are there any questions on this? Just initial part of this. Cliff, any questions?
No questions yet.
Okay, it's pretty straightforward. All right, next screen. So let's talk about soil first, because that is what that's where it all starts. So that's a core network. Why is a core network important? A core network is important because, number one, if you're a CFO in a small to middle market size company, your average tenure is somewhere between 2 and 3 years right now. And it's been that ever since 2008. It hasn't changed. And I would even go further to say that it's probably been that since 2005 if I were actually keeping statistics back then. Main reason is because of all of the PE activity. Once a PE firm sells a company, exits that portfolio company, there is a CFO change. The other thing that contributes to the average tenure, in my opinion, being so low is that when you get a new CEO, there's generally within a 9-month period going to be a CFO change, just like some of the other executive teams. So that's one reason it's important. The other reason it's important is because this is what's going to help you aid you in your success when you go into a company. It's also what's going to keep you local. When you're changing jobs every 2 to 3 years, this is what's going to keep you local and not have to do a national search. So what is a core network? Without me reading it, it's a network of contacts that are going to aid you in your job success. And then once that happens, once you roll out of that job, they're also going to be the people that are one step away from your next job opportunity. You have about a 70 to 80% chance or likelihood of these people that I have in the blue that are going to be introducing you to your next opportunity. So let's kind of talk a little bit about this. I've used an example that's pretty common in my business, and that would be a small to mid-sized company CFO. So who is the core network? It's attorneys. I'm not going to go through all this, but it's attorneys, it's your private equity, it's your board of directors, your peers, your tax audit partners, your bankers. So you can see all of them if you look around. Only 2 of those or 3 of those groups of people can actually hire a CFO or actually do hire a CFO, and that's private equity, board of directors, and CEOs. But the others are just as important, especially when you get looking over to the left-hand side, you see bankers, you see tax audit partners. Don't just stick with one. Maybe you're saying to yourself, oh, great, I've already contacted my Wells Fargo middle market, small to middle market banking guy or girl, so I can check that box. Well, you really could expand that. Expand it to other bankers locally. And when you're looking to your network and you say, well, what bankers would be a really good fit? Look for the Debbie Williams or the Cliff Edwards or the Jim Ashworths of banking. And those are folks that have been in the business for a while and have built a really, really strong local network. This is my opinion. Cliff may not agree, but I think a lazy person in my role or a lazy person as a banker would have at least 1,000 contacts, CEOs, CFOs, C-level type contacts locally after at least 10, 15 years. And that's a lazy person. So think about if you're talking to Wells Fargo, if you're talking to Comerica, or you're talking to some of the other local banks, you're multiplying your network on a secondary basis, just blowing it out of the water. 1,000 with Wells Fargo, 1,000 contacts, CEO, CFO contacts with Comerica and so forth. There's going to be some overlap at some point, but you get to the market pretty quickly by looking at your core network and determining who's going to be good contacts for you. And then also keep in mind too, these people, every one of these people has a vested interest. I hope they're helping you because of the goodness of their heart, but they also have a vested interest in helping you find your next opportunity. It's not looking, they're not playing tit for tat. Their hope is that if they introduce you to your next opportunity, that maybe you'll give them an opportunity to do an RFP for you or just to take your call, basically. And it's the same with me. If I introduce you to your next opportunity, I would hope that 5 years from now, somebody says, do you know a good recruiter or headhunter? You remember me. And that's what this whole networking thing is about. So once you've determined this, start filling in the blanks. Also, you can use this to say, where am I weak? Do I need to look more at attorneys? There's so many different types of attorneys. Do I need to look for more attorneys? I have the one attorney that my company used for 10 years or 2 years or 3 years. So look and say, well, who I'm looking for a PE job. Who are the PE guys and gals out there? Who's doing sell side? Who's doing buy side? So look for different ways you can be creative with this, because you're just trying to create a really strong network that's very efficient. Now, this is a very exclusive network too. This isn't something that you want to go inclusive if you're going to do an active job search. So the 68% of you that are in transition, you're going to want to expand out beyond this. It's going to be, I'm adding in the parents of the kid that goes and plays soccer with my kid. You're going to expand beyond this. But these people that I've put on this screen, we're your SEAL team. When you go into your next job, you take a network with you that's going to help you be successful.
Hey, Debbie.
Yeah.
What would you say, first of all, a confidential search versus just somebody in transition? How many recruiters, there are a lot of accounting and finance recruiters in North Texas. you know, how many do you recommend a person should know or have a relationship with, or is it anything goes?
So for me, I think there is a limit on that. If I were doing a confidential search, I would only talk to recruiters I trust. I mean, I would want to know these recruiters for years, and I would want to know that they have my confidentiality at heart. If you're in transition, I mean, I don't think it hurts to talk to as many as you want. I will say this, that not every recruiter will always work your level. It doesn't mean that you should not include them in your network. But I definitely think that you need to understand that there's going to be some that just can't help you. I know that if people come to me and I know that I'm making this up, 400,000, I know that I'm going to tell that person, look, you're a little bit at the top of my limit. I've never placed anybody for a $400,000 base. So let me refer you to someone that I know does, and I'll refer them to someone else who does. But I will also actively work with that person and share my network. So does that help answer your question?
Yeah, that's good.
Perfect. Let me think what else we could say about this slide. This concept will make your job search more efficient. It'll cut down the time. If you look from time of initial transition to time of job, if you build this out and really network it, it'll make your jobs more efficient and make you transition faster into your next opportunity. I will tell you that the reason I started recognizing this and how did I come up with a core network, several years ago when I started seeing a lot of PE activity. In the 90s, I truly believe that an average CFO tenure was probably 10 years. I don't know, 10 plus years. I wasn't always working this level of the market, but the turnover and the change just wasn't there until we started seeing a lot of private equity type movement in the 2000s. So I started realizing that there were CFOs out there that were getting jobs like within a week, or I wouldn't even know they were looking for a job and they would have a job. It just seems like there were some certain CFOs out there that opportunities always came their way. And so I kind of wondered why, because there wasn't any, I mean, there were special things about them, but you know, why so fast? And I started thinking about it, and I started realizing and talking to a lot of people, I started realizing they just had a really, really good core network, and it was a local network. So that's what I wanted to share with you. And then also, I take my own medicine. This is how I build out my network as well. I have tax and audit partners that I give referrals to and network with. I have attorneys. I have board of directors, I have CEOs. So I try to fill in all those blanks as well. And I also fill in the recruiter blanks as well, because I'm not everything, I can't be everything to everybody. So I want to be able to give good referrals out to people I trust. So I will say this, the one question that I get most often when I'm discussing core network with people is twofold. One is, I just recently moved here from XYZ state, and all of my network is in Chicago. You know, I have bankers, I have attorneys, I knew tons of commercial insurance brokers and benefits brokers. So, you know, what about me? You know, how am I going to do this? And I tell those people they need to become orphans. They need to adopt everybody's network. So when you're at a FENG meeting, or if you're at an FEI meeting and you meet Janie Sue Smith, and Janie Sue Smith says, well, Bob, what can I do to help you? Well, you know, if Janie Sue's been in this market for a long time, Janie Sue probably has private equity contacts, or Janie Sue has a tax partner that she's done business with a long time, or a bank or a local banker. So start asking questions, start adopting other people's network. I mean, it's something that they can do to help you. It's something that most people want to do to help you. And it's not something that's competing with you or them. So I say adopt people's networks. The other thing I will tell you too, this isn't a question, but most of the searches that I see, are either confidential, where maybe a company, a CEO it's a new CEO, maybe there's a change in the 3-year strategy of that company, so they need a new CFO, or maybe they need a new VP of finance to come in and tell them what the information means. Maybe that old VP of finance, or the former one, did a really good job of budgeting, forecasting, all the FP&A stuff, but maybe from a strategic standpoint, wasn't quite what they're going to need to grow into their 3-year shoes, as I call them. So CEOs or CFOs will come to me immediately when there's a confidential replacement, when they don't have time, or there's an urgency. But a lot of times a CEO and a CFO will go to their trusted network. And that's why this core network is so important too, is because they'll go to their banker, or they'll go to their attorney while they're sitting in a suite at the Stars game pre-COVID and say, you know, look, Joe Blow is leaving, or look, we're changing direction. We need somebody, if you happen to think of it. So they'll always go to their trusted network first, unless they're in those situations that I described, or a public company. A public company will always want to put out a news release that Spencer Stewart has this search, so everybody don't worry. So any questions on this?
And while we're waiting for those questions, why don't we throw a poll up here? Your second poll is on the screen. What is the size of company where you have spent most of your career? Small, pre-revenue to 300 million at annual revenue. Mid-size, that would be 300 million to 3 billion annual revenue, or larger than 3 billion. Give you just a few more seconds to answer that poll. Okay, it seems everyone has their answer in, and there are your results.
Okay, 35% of you are small to 300 million, 31% are mid-sized, 300 million to 3 billion, and then a third of you are 3 billion over. So that's really good to know. So why that's important is because if you're in a large $3 billion company, you're going to be able to add more people to your core network, treasury professionals, probably like street analyst is my guess, VPs of HR or chief HR officer. You'll be able to add in some of these because you've got more structure in companies like that. So there's more people that are going to be effective in helping you, introducing you to somebody internally in their company. So that's why I asked that question, is because it changes the landscape just a little bit. One of the other questions I get sometimes is, what if I'm not a CFO? What if I'm a controller? Or what if I'm a chief accounting officer? And I want to be a CFO one of these days, or I know that in 3 to 5 years, that's where my career development is taking me. Well, then good for you, because you're going to have a lot more that you can do. Whereas a CFO only has like 3 people, as I pointed out, that could really affect a hiring decision. You're going to have a lot more. A chief accounting officer could hire you. A VP of finance could introduce you to somebody. A COO could introduce you to somebody. So there's more opportunities for you at that controller level, or, you know, the 3 to 5 years away from CFO. The other thing that I get asked a lot is, you know, what's the most common mistake you see people make when they're building a network, or when they're going out to network? And I would have to tell you that number one, they don't put it as a tangible search. They don't think of their search as a tangible search, which is crazy to me, because all of you are overachievers, or you wouldn't be on this Zoom meeting. You've acquired a lot in your career development and done very well. You should approach this job search just like you would any project in your company. You would never have an ERP implementation that you didn't set up and really monitor. So I see a lot of people just not setting something up as something tangible that they can measure. The other thing I see people doing from a networking standpoint is they'll tend to just network in one area, maybe like peers. They'll spend 40 hours a week pre-COVID, spend 40 hours a week having coffee with just peers or one banker, and that's the same banker they've known for 10 years. So I see the mistake being that they don't really broaden their core network and then try to fill in the blanks underneath each category. They don't realize that it's okay to call Joe that used to call on you from Wells Fargo. It's okay to call Joe and say, hey, are you interested in having coffee? And by the way, I'm in transition and I'm out networking. I can use your help.
Hey, Debbie.
Any questions?
Yeah, Deb, we got a quick question is, you know a lot of people and you're a very busy person. What's the best way to stay in touch with you as part of their network? And then what are some of the things that don't help?
Okay, that's a good question. For me, I wished organization was one of my strengths, but unfortunately it's not. Memory is really good, but strengths just, organization doesn't seem to be there. So anything that somebody could do to help me stay organized is a great way to stay in contact with me. So what I really like is, I like if we've talked, I like for you to send me a meeting invitation or send me a text saying, hey, you know, we talked 2 weeks ago. I'd love just to chit chat with you for 5 minutes and bounce some ideas off of you. Let's talk about my search. Or I have, I have 3 companies that I'm targeting and I see that you know the CFO there. I'd like to set up a time just to call you. So just send me a meeting request. I really like that. If it's not something that I can do, I'll always send back an adjusted meeting request. As far as timeliness, how often do I think I need to talk to somebody? There's really not a certain time on it. I leave that more up to the person in transition for you guys and gals. I want you to talk with me anytime that you would like to. If you need help, if you just want to bounce ideas off of me, sometimes I'm the perfect person to do that. I enjoy it and I love sharing my network. So there's really not a certain period of time. I will say this, I think that if a month or 2 months goes by and I haven't heard from you, it would be so good if you would just send me an email and just say, hey, I want to give you an update of what I've been doing. And not everything has to be in terms of, oh, I'm interviewing here, or I'm interviewing there, or I've had 5 offers. Just let me know how you're doing. Let me know how you're feeling. Just make sure we're not losing contact. And that should be on my side as well. So I apologize if I don't stay as in good contact as I should sometimes. So does that help a little bit?
Definitely does. And I would mirror what you're saying, Debbie, is that, you know, it's if somebody's in a job search and I'm working with them, just a quick email or just a quick update every 3 or 4 weeks, you know, it's easy to get back on emails. And then for me, it's easy to plan something if the email or the invitation kind of sets it up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree totally. I don't know why, I love meeting requests. I mean, it's just, it just makes so much sense to me. So, and it helps me manage my time really well. So
I think the other thing too, is if you're in second rounds or you're close to getting an offer, it's, you know, in our business, it can be very busy and it can be really up and down. However, if you're getting really close, you know, I got a call from a CFO a couple of years ago and he talked to a retained friend of his. He talked to Debbie and he talked to me, and it was just some tactical stuff to get to the second round and then to get toward the offer. And I like the way he did it. He really thought it out. I agree with you totally. Yeah, he thought it out. He got help, and he wound up taking the job. And as far as I can tell, I think he's still there after 6 or 7 years, rather than just going right in and, you know, not using your network and not using some expertise.
Right, and not only that, Cliff, it's like, we also may know oh gosh, if you're getting close to negotiations, let me introduce you to this attorney, or at least this is the attorney I used for my employment contract. I mean, we can also kind of throw in some things like that that maybe somebody doesn't really think about too much, especially if you're a first-time CFO. Maybe a lot of that's not familiar to you. So I think you're right, Cliff. Reaching out to you, me, or whoever is a really, really good idea.
Let me
Well, I would say,
interject if I might. Please let us know also if and when you land.
Yes, and you know what, Bob, that brings up a whole nother deal that I meant to tell you before we go to another slide. Absolutely, because we're vested in you now. If you're in transition and you land, we've spent time together. We've formed a relationship with you. And I know I can speak on behalf of Cliff and Bob. We want to continue staying in touch with you. It's not just a once every 3 years, we'll talk to you and ask you, how you're doing. Let's see what we can do. I'd rather keep that relationship going. So not only that, but it's a really good time before you start your next job, even if it's just a weekend, to go back in and really analyze your network and really look and see, well, who are some of my core contacts? What was surprising? Sally over here that you probably didn't think would be a core contact is part of your core network. So go back and analyze this, because your clock is starting over again. Once your first day of that new job, your clock is ticking again, and you're going to need to stay in touch with your core network. And I would even do this on the next slide. You'll see I would even set up this network to be a little bit more automated. So if you could go to the next slide, Nancy, past the other direction. There you go. Go next one. There you go. So I always say, and especially the farming analogy, you got to be able to make this tangible, right? But I say set some of this stuff up as it's automated. Use LinkedIn. Use LinkedIn. Let LinkedIn. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So I set everything up on a spreadsheet just because I use the farming analogies, but plus I'm also very visual. If I lose weight or I'm trying to lose weight, I get on the scales every day. I measure how much weight I'm losing or gaining, the opposite way sometimes, what I'm eating. So I measure all this and I do it on a spreadsheet. I do the same for networking, and this is how I build my network. So I start with a contact name. So let's say you're reaching out to Jeff Smith. Jeff is, you can see his company, his position, type of contact. That's all pretty intuitive stuff. The important things here, type of contact, that gets back to your core network. I think it's very important to fill in what type of contact that is, because you're going to need to be able to, if you've had a bad week of networking and you're like, gosh, I can't imagine what I did different this week that made me feel like I didn't have the results that I was looking for. Go in and sort your spreadsheet on recruiters, on attorneys, on private equity, and just see where you're weak. This is going to tell you, that column is going to tell you, number one, how broad you're building your network. And remember, you want to be inclusive if you're in transition. So those 68% of you that are on this call, you need to make sure you're reaching beyond the core network as much as possible too. So this is going to tell you where you're weak. And it's also going to give you an idea of how to help people help you when you go to Bob's meetings or when you go to have coffee with somebody. It's going to be able to give you an idea to someone how they can help you, what introductions they can make that would be really valuable to your local network. Okay. Then you get into, like I said, more intuitive, kind of no-brainer stuff, email, mobile, contact date. Sometimes people say contact notes, and use this however you want. I mean, I'm just giving you a template. Fill in what you like, use what you like. Hopefully you'll get one idea that you'll find valuable in this. And then I go into the next column, LinkedIn. I add this one in recently just because LinkedIn has so many tools now that will automate things for you. And the reason I'm saying this, like Jeff Smith, after you make contact with Jeff Smith, you need to go into LinkedIn and you need to find Jeff and send Jeff an invitation to join your network if you're not already connected. Or if for some reason you don't want to do that, or you feel like that's not appropriate, go in and follow Jeff Smith, because you want to know when Jeff is doing things. You want to know when Jeff is making job changes. You want to know when Jeff's birthday is. I know it sounds weird, but you want to know as many things about Jeff as you can, just because you need more activity. You need to be able to relate to Jeff several different ways other than saying every time I call Jeff or I email Jeff, I'm still in transition. So anytime Jeff does something, you'd probably need to know it. The other thing I would do is Jeff is CFO of XYZ company. I would personally go into XYZ company on LinkedIn on their company page. I would follow their company page. That way, when you get up one morning and you're just going through LinkedIn and just seeing notifications, what do I need to know? What has my network done overnight? You see XYZ Jeff's company just made an acquisition, or maybe they got voted the 10 best companies to work for in DFW. Well, that gives you an action item to reach out to Jeff. That way you're making this search, this networking more fun. It's so boring, or at least it is to me, to call Jeff Smith every day for me and say, Jeff, or every month, Jeff, I'm a recruiter. I still recruit accounting and finance. Yeah, I've been doing it for 30 years, but I'm still doing it. I think Jeff would probably quit taking my call because it's such a boring call, and I would probably quit calling because it's such a boring call. But I like calling Jeff or sending him an email and saying, hey, I just saw that your company made a really good purchase, in London, in Europe. Wow, that's great. It's going to really help your supply chain. I hope you get all the synergy you're looking for. Or let's say it's Jeff's birthday. I send everybody a little happy birthday. So just little personal touches that it doesn't have to be all personal, but everything helps. Which kind of leads me into the next column, which to me is the hardest. Action items are the very hardest in all of this networking and job search process. So I spent my whole first year as a recruiter. Cover your ears, Cliff, because you don't want to know that any recruiters are doing this. But I spent my whole first year doing nothing but making first contacts because I didn't know how to call somebody back. I didn't know what I would say if I called them back. So I spent the whole first year doing nothing but first calls or first contacts. There wasn't the internet back then, so it was all telephone. So I started realizing I needed some other reasons to call somebody. I needed to be more integrated into what was going on with them and their company. I needed to feel like what I was talking to them about was relevant. It's not, how many cats do you have these days, or dogs, or by the way, are you hiring anybody? I just felt like I needed to have a little bit more concrete business reasons. So action items to me is the hardest. So I've given you just a few ideas of action items. The first one's so easy: send thank you and follow-up note, attach your resume. I would say almost any time you reach out to somebody, especially if it's just like once every month, once every 2 months, always attach a resume. You don't have to refer to it. Say, oh, I've attached a resume for your review. Just attach it, because your purpose is to go into their archive items, so that when Cliff Edwards calls you and calls so-and-so, somebody you sent your resume to, and says, hey, I'm looking for this type of manufacturing CFO with private equity experience, that person could say, you know what? I just got a resume. I know it's here in my archive somewhere, and then they can forward it. So you've helped people be able to help you very easily. So anyway, that's a little bit about that. And then people are going to give you referrals. We're in a great area, Dallas-Fort Worth, compared to other cities. When I interview people and when I listen to them talk, Dallas-Fort Worth has the very best, or at least I think we're one of the best, supportive networking. Almost anybody that you connect with will want to help you and will want to give you a referral. It's almost overwhelming how nice people are here. And it's great, but you need to have a column with referrals for two reasons. Number one, so that you can tie that referral back to who gave it to you. And then it's also kind of an action item. When you get up that next day and you look at your networking tool, you can say, hey, I haven't connected with Debbie Williams or Cliff Edwards yet, and I need to make sure they're on my to-do list today. And then once you connect with us, Cliff or me, then we become promoted. We can drop down into your primary contact name column as now we're contacts within your network. It creates other action items too. It creates a thank you and resume to me and to Cliff. But then it also, it's kind of for every force, there's an equal and opposite force. It also creates another action item back to Jeff Smith, say, Jeff, I've connected with Debbie Williams. She talks too much, but she had some great ideas. And also I talked to Cliff, I really appreciate it. And you've let that person see you open the gift that they gave you. So it's a nice thing to do, but it also encourages that person. Now they want to help you even more.
Hey, Debbie,
so it's just a good thing to
Debbie,
do. Yeah.
I would say also, you know, basically you and I make our living following these kind of programs, right? It makes it easy for us to stay in touch. It's almost like a marketing drip plan. So when let's say that I interview somebody that's in transition, it's usually a mid to higher level person. And I say, hey, stay in touch with me. Send me an email or give me a call every 3 or 4 weeks. Let me know how it's going. Now, if I ask 10 people to do that, really only 1 or 2 will, you know, and it's not because they don't believe me. It's the finance mindset. And having been I used to be a CPA and I had a finance background, is that they don't want to bug, you know, it's my old boss or it's a recruiter. They know I'm looking. I don't want to bug them, but it's really just the opposite. You know, the thing is if I talk with you and then I don't hear anything for 6 months, I may have had a handful of jobs come and go, but we'll start assuming that person found a job because they're not staying in touch. And also what it does is if that person is on a program of calling back on a certain interval and they're consistent, just a quick email even, it's easy to return an email, is that it makes the recruiter or the person they're dealing with in their network feel like they're an organized person, that they're thorough and they've got a little hustle to them. It actually makes your opinion of them, you know, of them go up. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen where somebody would say, well, gosh, this person didn't call me back. I've emailed them 3 times in the last 5 months. And then sure enough, that person makes a referral that gets them a job, you know, because everybody is busy. But I feel like you're greatly helping your job search if you do that drip campaign, keep planting those seeds.
Yeah,
Excellent.
exactly. And the only thing I add to it is just use LinkedIn too. You know, let LinkedIn help you, because when you're managing that many contacts in your search, you just need a little help. I will tell you this too, Cliff, to your point about, oh, I don't want to bug you. There's always these feelings of I don't want to bug you. Another thing that I hear is, well, I feel kind of uncomfortable reaching out to my network and reuniting with my network because now I'm looking for a job. I feel terrible because I haven't kept in contact with these people. So these people I haven't talked to in maybe 10 years, and now I'm reaching out to them because I need something. And I just always answer that statement or that feeling with, do it because they understand, they do the same thing. So it's reciprocated back. There will be a time when that person is needing to reunite with you for the same reason. So don't feel uncomfortable about it. Just go ahead and do it. It's just everybody I know gets into a job and they're working 20 hours a day, and then it's between, oh, do I network? Do I call Debbie Williams just to say hello, or do I go home and see my family for dinner? And hopefully go home and see my family for dinner wins out every time. But just every once in a while, shoot your core network an email, stay in contact, and don't feel weird about it. The other thing I was going to say before we move off the slide is, I mentioned setting up, setting up your contacts, creating metrics. The metrics here, which you can tell at the top of the spreadsheet, these are the only things you can control, and that is how many seed you plant, meaning contact names, what type of contact it is. That's what kind of soil do you have, how broad is your network, how many are your core contacts, how many are outside of that, and then your maintenance of your network. Those are the only things that you can control in your whole job search. Everything else is just up to Mother Nature or to luck or to the market as to timing and opportunities that come your way. Do we have any questions?
We have a quick question.
Yes.
We have a quick question from Art Baker. I tested Zoom Info.
Hi, Art.
Yeah. Here's what Art says. I tested Zoom Info and found it to be better than LinkedIn because it has work emails of all the senior executives, whereas LinkedIn usually has personal emails, but the cost is prohibitive at $10,000. Are there any cheaper versions of Zoom Info?
Honestly, I don't know of any. Do you, Cliff? I don't know of any. I mean, I pay $10,000, $12,000 for a more in-depth version of LinkedIn, but it doesn't always be contact information. Do you know of any, Cliff?
You know, I'm not certain on that either. You know, I could definitely see there being some advantages to sending work email addresses. But yeah, I'll have to look into that. That's interesting.
You know, Art and Cliff, one thing I know I used to do, and this has been a while ago, so I don't know if this still works, but I know that when I first started my business, you know, we tried to operate on shoestrings. I always operate on shoestrings, but we definitely were operating on shoestrings then. I would sometimes go in the internet, like if I were trying to send an email to Cliff at Thomas Edwards, but I didn't know Cliff's email address, I would go out and just do a Google search at thomasedwards.com. And sometimes that would pull up different people in that company, so I could tell the format. So I could guess that it's probably Cliff at thomasedwards.com or C. Edwards at thomasedwards.com. I could get the idea of the format. I don't know if that still works, but for sure public companies probably, but that might be something you try. It's better than spending $10,000.
For sure. How about a poll?
Great idea.
Okay. I've launched your third poll, folks, on your screen. Where are you in your career development? I am currently a CFO or vice president. I'm 3 to 5 years away from CFO or vice president role. I'm 5+ years, or my career goals are on a different path. I'll give you a few moments to answer that one. Lots of choices. Okay, I think that about ends our opportunity for the poll. If everybody has their answer in, I'm going to share those results.
Okay. Our current CFOs or vice president is 58%. I'm 3 to 5 years away from a CFO or a VP role. That's 20%. And then we have another 23% that says I'm over 5 years away from that role, or my career goals are a different path. That's great. Hopefully this is applicable then to a lot of people within this group. For the people that are on a different career path, I would encourage you to just think about the definition of core network being one place removed from a job, and think of who your audience would be.
And Debbie, Debbie, we have an answer or partial answer on the Zoom info question from Helen Dickey. Thank you, Helen. Here's what Helen said. Here are some others I've heard of but not tried. Rocket Reach, Wiza, that's W-I-Z-A, Info USA. She heard that Zoom Info is the best, but her understanding is the price tag may be around $2,000 to $2,500.
It's crazy. I will tell you this. I think that these tools, people sometimes ask me, you know, hey, look, my company's given me outplacement, or should I even ask, you know, negotiate outplacement services? I always say yes, and this is the main reason. It's not their resume writing. I've never really seen outplacement services have really good specific resumes like what you need in our area, our niche area. But they have tools like, I believe they have tools like Zoom and some other tools that you can use, subscriptions you can use. So if you're in a position that you can ever negotiate that, that might be helpful. Thank you, Helen, by the way. All right, let me kind of wrap this up a little bit, and then we'll go to just questions. If you have any questions about the market or about this presentation, I'm more than happy to answer them. It doesn't have to be necessarily about networking and job search. I will say this, that if you do make your search tangible and you do use a spreadsheet tool similar to what I've shown you, it will help keep you consistent. I don't know how you feel about your job search, but I would say that most people I talk to that are in job search more than 30 days feel like it's somewhat of a roller coaster ride, a lot of ups and a lot of downs, which relate to, oh, this week I had 3 interviews, you know, Zoom meeting interviews, but then maybe the next week you have nothing, it's crickets. If you will just kind of stay true to your spreadsheet and true to realizing that I've got to just keep planting seeds. I've just got to keep making new contacts and following up with my contacts. If you'll stay true to all that process and just really realize, be cognizant of a core network, I believe that the results will come. It's just a matter of time, and it will take out those ups and downs. You're never going to take out the peak and valleys in my mind. I've been doing this 30 years, and I'll be honest with you, I still have peaks and valleys. It's just I try to even them out, and the way I do that is by continuing to make new contacts. I continue every day, even though I've been doing this long. I am always looking for new CFOs, new controllers. I'm always looking for the good people to add to my network. So I'm always continuing to add to my network. I'm not that person that says I'm just going to harvest the network that I have. So I hope that helps. Don't tie yourself if you get involved in an interview process. Don't tie yourself to that interview and put all your eggs in one basket. Remember, it's a journey. Don't stop your processes. Okay. And then once you do land, don't forget, call Bob, call me, call Cliff and Helen. Let us all know that you've landed, and let us know what you're doing. And then go back to your spreadsheet and say, okay, I want to evaluate my network. Get it all evaluated, automate it, because you're going to be working 15, 16 hours a day again, and up to your knees in crocodiles. And it's going to be very difficult for you to make sure you maintain that core network, but it's really important, even if it's only 4 times a year. Any questions? Congratulations, get a new job.
We've got several from Patricia Jones. You want to do a survey first? Let's do that.
Unfortunately, yeah, we're going to run out of time if I don't push a few polls out to the folks here. Is your network in the DFW area? Maybe you have relocated. This helps her direct your comments and questions to those if you might be new to the area. And I'll give you just a few minutes. You can go through a question now, Cliff, while they finish that poll, and then I'll share that screen and we'll know.
Okay. Debbie, this is from Patricia Jones. With COVID, what are the best ways to connect with your network? LinkedIn and, looks like it kind of, the question disappeared. But it looks like Patricia was using LinkedIn and a couple of other methods. But with everybody working remotely, or a lot of people still, what are the best ways to work your core network?
Okay, I am so glad, Patricia, you asked that question. Thank you, Cliff, because I actually meant to bring that up in my presentation. I think this is, I mean, this is a very sad time, right? And it's a very strange time, but it's an opportunity that I've never seen since pre-internet. Before the internet, I could call somebody and they would pick up the phone. So it made networking and introducing yourself to people very, very easy. Right now, I think because of COVID, people are working from home and they are actually reading emails. It's the first time since I can't tell you how many years that I really think people are reading emails. For me, I feel like you've got a captive audience because you've got people that are actually paying attention to email now and to LinkedIn. Most people that I know that are on LinkedIn have the app, so it's almost like a text that comes up automatically on your phone when you send a message to someone. So I think right now, honestly, I think it's probably easier to get connected with somebody in a timely manner because of working from home. That's just my opinion, and it's been working for me. So I think it's an opportunity for you if you're in transition.
Yeah, some people are having, you know, as much as an hour more a day of connection time, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, they're just reading emails. I can tell you this time last year, I don't even know what percentage I would say of executives were not reading email, but if I said it was over 90%, I would be accurate. I believe that people were just looking in a preview pane and determining whether or not that was an email that they wanted to open and spend time with. I have a friend, a CFO lady that told me, she said, look, if you ever send me an email, I want you to send me what you're trying to say in the subject line. She said, I'm not going to read your email. I'll just tell you that. And I'm not going to read in the preview pane. But so whatever you need to tell me needs to go in that subject line. So I think the world has slowed down now. Not slowed down, it's just different. And I think email is actually really working.
You know, and I think when you do connect is find out what's going on in their life a little bit. And you're great at this, Debbie, is maybe they have a kid that's graduating from college that the job market's a little bit slow at that level, right? It's not good. Yeah. And so, you know, what ways that you can help them, because it really is, you know, that servant leadership of, hey, I'm reaching out to you. I have something to offer. What can I do to help you, you know, as well? I always say that, hey, we're talking to a lot of different people. Who would I meet that you would want to meet, right? So we have another question, and it's Warren Rapert. Hey, Warren. Hi,
Warren.
I am getting a lot of interview activity, but final commitments are slow. Is this common due to COVID? Are companies building a short list for when things break loose? How can I push things along, or should I just wait it out?
Warren, hi. I will tell you this is, I mean, whatever you're experiencing is what I'm experiencing too. And so here's my thoughts on that. Number one, I would just keep the processes going and keep planting seeds. I would never say, okay, I've got so much activity that I'm going to slow down my first, you know, sending resumes out or looking for other additional opportunities. So never slow that part down, because you just don't know, you know this, you don't know what's going to be the right opportunity and when it will happen. I'll tell you why I think it's happening this way is I think that the way COVID has affected this is you've got companies that maybe changing strategy just a little bit. I don't think they're building short lists. I believe that when they're interviewing you and talking about it, I think especially in the small to mid-sized market, these are jobs that they're tweaking to try to match with a three-year strategy. So they're trying to make sure that this job is in line with whatever they get tasked with doing. And sometimes that changes. So I think there's several reasons. COVID has probably changed the way they onboard. I know I had a VP position that I placed in June that they just weren't sure how to onboard him. So that held up the process probably at least a month, just because they weren't really sure about how to do that since they were all work from home. So I think COVID's affected it from just how do you onboard. None of these positions are set in stone as far as exact experience. So a lot of this time, they will tailor the job toward the person that's going to help them get there in 3 years. So you have a lot of that changing of responsibilities. And then also, I think, maybe this is just me feeling this way, I think there's more people involved in the interviewing process. I think there's more double checking and more getting buy-in for more of the management team. So that's what I see happening. How about you, Cliff?
Yeah, same thing. I think, you know, at first it was people couldn't conceive of hiring somebody they hadn't met, you know, shook hands with face to face. That's changing. And, you know, business goes on. There's a lot of opportunities out there, and then there's a lot of turnarounds or soft turnarounds. And so people, you know, companies need to hire. I'm also seeing, we're starting to see positions where an out-of-state company needs, especially something like a heavy financial analysis person, and they don't care where they live, right? And so, you know, that will be interesting is, you know, you're seeing more companies consider remote that weren't before. So we have a question from Burke Whipple. Debbie, I'm wondering what recommendations you would make to go from a large $40 billion public company to a small to medium-sized company. I would tend to think that the experience can transfer, but what do the smaller firms look for?
Okay, Bert, great question. I mean, awesome question, really, because that is one of the hardest things to do, to point out to someone that, hey, I'm at a $40 billion company, but I can go to your $200 million company and be very successful in leading your leadership team to whatever your 3-year picture is. The way you do it, and this is just me talking, my opinion, but the way you do it is you look for, you don't overwhelm them with saying, I supervised 200 indirect reports and 100 direct reports, and I led this effort. I got my green belt in Six Sigma. $200 million companies, I mean, I hope that they have some form of Six Sigma, but the green belt doesn't mean anything to them. And 200 people is probably the size of some of their divisions or their companies. So what I would recommend is that you go back in your career with that $40 billion company or find times that you were in a division, or maybe even the startup division. I'll give you an example. I met somebody the other day from a large technology company that everybody here would recognize. But that person had actually started up a startup division to kind of get it up, get it legs, get it running before they integrated it into their big technology company. Well, that was very applicable. I mean, I could use that as a recruiter. I could help that person be able to relate to that smaller company. So it's things like that. It's being able to point out how you've been able to manage small teams to make accomplishments. Look for growth, managing growth, because if they're looking at you, it's probably because you've been where they want to be. That's what you have to offer, is building that infrastructure for growth for a $200 or $300 million company or $500 million company. You can say to them, look, I've been in a $3 billion company, or I've been in a $3 billion division that, you know, we grew by acquisition, or we took our operations from US based to doing business in Europe or South America or wherever. You can start talking about accomplishments like that and get them off of the, oh my God, this person's coming from a $40 billion company and had 200 direct reports. Does that help?
Very good.
Would you add anything, Cliff?
You know, same thing. I think, you know, in the job search, it's kind of it's not just other people's perceptions, it's your perception, right? Is that you have to believe that what you're offering is worth more than what company's going to pay for it. So a lot of it comes from confidence, and that it is a good thing that they're meeting you too, because you do have a lot to offer. And so let's say that you work for Pepsi, or you work for, you know, a nice mid-sized Fortune 200 company. You know, it's hard to get hired there. And so that means you have a lot on the ball. And, so if you're dealing with somebody that says, oh gosh, they work for a big bureaucracy, they won't understand it. I like your approach on it is, and you want to, for that phone screen, you want to be able to look at that potential objective and be ready to answer that question with those specific examples. But don't forget, the person that gets hired by a GE or, a big international accounting firm and moves up the ranks, that is a really nice signal on their resume. And so, a lot of the job search comes down to that extra bit of effort, because it does become a numbers game. And effort, those are the folks that get the most opportunities, and just have confidence in that. There's always going to be naysayers and people that say you're too old or you have only oil and gas experience, those kind of things. But, I've heard Jim Ashworth say this before, which I love, is that if you can get that introduction, if you can get the interview, then you can get the job.
Great point.
So,
Could we put a poll up and then we'll continue with Q&A?
yeah.
Thank you. Have you structured your job search and network as if it were a project? That does speak to what Debbie was saying all day. Carefully answer that question. I'll give you just a few seconds for that. We do have one more poll left before we finalize our Q&A and go into our close. It looks like everyone is finished voting. I'm going to share those results. Look at that, half and half. I bet they're changing their mind as we speak. Thank you.
A quick one, Debbie, that everybody wants to know is, how is the North Texas job market?
I think August was a little soft. I would attribute that every year. I don't know why, but the job market is tied into getting kids in school, getting routines down. I've already seen a pickup. A lot of new positions, if you can believe it, at VP and CFO level. So I'm seeing some good activity coming down the pipe. I'm just starting to see it for September and for the fall. So I would say it was good. If I said industries, I would say it's broad-based. Me particular, it seems like the industries that I've seen recently, this for the last 4 months, have been technology, software as it relates to healthcare, software as it relates to anything really, and then I've seen some services. But I think it's pretty broad-based. I don't think and right now the companies are trying to figure out where their problems are. So that's why they're going to hire you folks on this call. That's why they're going to hire you, is to fix their problems, whether it be growth related, whether it be turnaround, whether it be, oh my gosh, we have no practices, or oh my gosh, I got this call the other day. Oh my goodness, we have someone in the finance chair, but we don't know what all this means. That person sends us a 45-page spreadsheet to the VP of sales, and we don't know what that means. So I think now is a good opportune time to ask somebody what their problems are and solve them. Don't look at job descriptions as much. Start focusing on what Mr. CEO, Ms. CEO, what do you need this person to accomplish in the first year? And that'll tell you their pain points.
Absolutely. And here's one.
Let me add something, if I might, that I'm seeing quite a bit of, and that is that a lot of the jobs that I'm seeing coming through are no longer as concentrated on location as they were previously. There's an awful lot of them. So if you're geographically challenged in your search, don't just think of Dallas-Fort Worth jobs. There is a lot of stuff that's happening out there where they're saying, that you can be relatively virtual, or that location is not as important, or that they reload. So be sure to include in your search things that are outside of DFW as well.
Yeah, you used to see, if you've ever worked on one of the coasts for a project, or those kind of things, is you would see people Monday morning coming back Friday, to New York City, and Now that's going to change, at least, and it has been changing. A few of those days would be remote and maybe all of those days. Debbie, we have one more question from Brenton Van Breda.
Okay.
What advice would you have for someone with senior financial executive experience overseas? So here they are in Dallas now, and their experience is primarily outside the US.
Okay, well, hi Brendan. It's good to hear from you. What I would do is I go kind of back to my problem solving. I would look for companies that are international, or so that they may be having problems internationally, especially now. Or I would look for companies, which is going to be kind of hard to do, but I would look for companies that are looking to expand their markets internationally. So how do you do that? That's kind of the next question. And I don't know how to tell you to do that, just being honest, except a recruiter would know that. A recruiter or a CEO or somebody within that core network would probably know some of those expansion plans. That would be the best advice that I would give you. The other thing I could use is if your international experience included acquisitions and integration, or maybe new product, building analysis around new product launches, I would use that and try to relate it to companies here in DFW. So any problem solving that you've done, or building for growth, or best practices, you could use that for companies that are not international. It's just that you would hope that they would value your international experience, but it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah,
One of the things I might add to that would be, in Dallas, there are an awful lot of organizations like the German American Chamber of Commerce, or the African American Chamber of Commerce, or some of that sort of stuff, that you might be in a position of looking at networking into some of those foreign chambers of commerce.
No doubt. There also might be, if you've had experience with some major financial plans and budgeting process from a multi-unit, multi-country level, or maybe you've got SAP experience, those kind of things can be leveraged into a job interview, or also maybe a long-term project, that can get your foot in the door as well.
Hey, Cliff, I have one more idea on that. So if I had strong international experience and I were trying to think outside the box, I might network with bankers or people that work on the treasury side and do a lot of FX, a lot of derivatives, anything that would mean, maybe not just derivatives, but especially FX. That would mean that they probably have a portfolio of clients here in Dallas-Fort Worth that have international type operations.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, do we have time for our last polling question?
We do.
All right. The last polling question is on your screen. Have you built out your LinkedIn profile, and are you making connections? Your choices are yes, somewhat, but I need more details. No, I do not have a LinkedIn profile. It doesn't look like anybody has no LinkedIn profile. We're almost there. I see we have about a couple more votes, folks, and then I'll end that. All right, it looks like we're there. And there are your results. Okay.
Okay. Well, we want to thank Debbie for speaking today, and thank you, Nancy and Bob and everybody involved. If you have any other questions, it's cliff@thomasedwards.com. And Debbie, what's your email address?
Debbie@hastonwilliams.com.
Well, thank you so much. I feel like we had well over 100 people, and just a great topic and really great delivery. Thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for participating in today's webcast. As I said in the beginning, the CPE notification email should be sent in 7 to 10 business days. This does end our webcast, and we wish you a very great evening. Thanks for participating.